So I always get asked whether buying an apartment is a sound, solid investment or not. So I'm going to share a bit of my personal experiences that I've had in the past and whether I'd buy one or not. So to put it bluntly and to put it shortly, would I buy one? The answer is no. And these are the reasons. So we'll start off with the cons. The cons are that an apartment complex usually has strata. So what strata is, it's an organisation of people that manage the building and the actual site, and they maintain the repairs and maintenance, the landscaping, anything that needs to get fixed basically is managed by the fund. So at the end of each quarter, you have to make a payment to the strata fund to cover all of these expenses, as well as the strata manager. And at the end of it, usually each year, they keep increasing the strata fee. So at the end of the day, you have no control on how much this payment is, and it usually continues to go up. So I don't like strata, and usually when you get into the bigger type of complexes where there's 30, 40, 50, 100 people, if there is a change that needs to be made, the majority of the people have to agree to it, and trying to get a few people to agree to anything, let alone 100 or 150 people, is just near impossible. So usually not much gets done, the bare basics gets done, and the fees always increase. So for that reason, I'm not a big fan of strata. So on top of that, when you own an apartment, you have the right to a percentage of the building and the land, which is usually a very small percentage. Because it's a small percentage of land, what happens is when there is a capital appreciation, like there's been in the property markets where things have sort of skyrocketed, apartments don't get the same type of appreciation because the land size is very small. So there's not much capital growth in apartments. And lastly, the thing I don't like about apartments is they can just build so many of them. So whereas if you go into an area and you buy a house, it's usually limited by land supply. So there's not much land and there's people that want to live there, you have demand, and usually the value of the property goes up quicker because you have more demand. But with apartments, they can just bring them up left, right and center. They'll just rezone, and they'll have a few hundred people just, a few hundred apartments just all of a sudden come up in a specific area. So when you go to sell an apartment, and especially when there's a lot of apartments on the market, it's very hard to differentiate your apartment. So this is why prices don't really move that much. They may go up slightly, but more or less they stay where they are. So if you look back, say at Rouse Hill, you could have bought an apartment off the plan in 2018 for about 550,000. Now it's 2024, it's 6 years later, 7 years later. You can still get apartments cheaper than that, if not the same. So if you bought an apartment back in 2018, you basically haven't made any money off it, and you're probably still negatively geared as well. So you're losing money each week to cover the mortgage. So that's probably all the cons for me. There are some pros though. So sometimes when you want to get into the property market, apartments offer that opportunity because the prices are generally lower. So just to get your foot in the door, sometimes the apartment is the way to go. Second of all, the apartment also has a high depreciation value. So if you're an investor and you want to depreciate against your taxable income, an apartment is really good because the majority of the cost in an apartment is the building. So usually the depreciation rates are really high as well. So you get good tax refunds when it comes to apartments. Lastly, with the apartments, you're more accessible to more locations. So it's easier to get into an apartment that's closer to the city because there's so many of them. So especially if you're younger and you're trying to get in and you want to live closer towards the city, apartments do make sense. But at the end of the day, it's all up to personal preference. Me, I don't like apartments. I like to own properties or assets that have land, because land is where you're going to make your money over the longer term. So let me know your thoughts.